Thank you, Dr. Walker, for coming up again. I just wanted to ask you a few questions regarding the finances and the budgeting process for the DeKalb County School District. Were the school board members responsible for creating a budget?
We participated in the process.
And how did you participate in the process?
We received the recommendations from the staff, and we voted on the budget in its totality. And after the budget was approved and adopted, then we had the responsibility for oversight.
And when you said you received a recommendation, who actually was responsible for crunching numbers and coming up with numbers that went with particular budget items?
The chief financial officer and his or her staff, the members there, and they would be reviewed or approved by the superintendent before they came back to the board, and the board would in the process answer them.
And did you consider the chief financial officer to be an expert in the area of finances and budget?
Yes.
And did you rely on his expertise in that area?
Yes, I did.
And did you also rely on the expertise of other professionals in the area of finances and budget when you were coming up with a budget for the DeKalb County School District?
Yes.
And what other type of experts did you rely upon?
Whenever I discussed, whatever, it depended on the category. If I was looking at budgetary issues, I would rely on the expertise of the CFO and the designated person and his staff. If I were looking at an issue involving instruction, I would rely on the deputy for instruction, whichever individual he or she designated. But at all times, we would receive the expert or the professionals or the experts in the area. And that was one of the major criticisms I had about all of the complaints of fiscal mismanagement. They were, in my mind, only rumors. Because every time I asked for the evidence, I got another rumor that you have fiscal mismanagement. And when I would ask people if they were familiar with the state budgets, which is what guided my decision and my opinions and my knowledge about it, they would disregard it, discard it as if that were something that didn't exist. When in fact, the state auditors, the ones who produced the state budget, were experts in their areas, and they didn't pay no favoritism for any particular school system. They had a definite responsibility to ensure that state monies were being spent as they were supposed to have been spent. And we were fortunate in the DeKalb school system in that from 2008 up to 2012, we had an increase in fund balance every year. And this is extremely significant, an increasing fund balance every year. And it was deeply troubling to me that people who did not understand school finances kept saying we had fiscal mismanagement. And one of my hopes was that SACS, which was an organization that gave us MET in the area of resources in the March report, would help clear up rather than add fuel to those types of concerns. And I have tried to preach that. And we had a healthy discussion between one of my board members who claimed they knew about finances but were no financial expert, and they were concerned about us under budgeting electrical bills and paying excessively legal bills, which in its totality could never total more than 5% of the budget. But in each year we came up with a fund balance. Certainly, I don't like to under-budget anything, and I don't like to pay expensive legal bills, but I found them to be necessary in some instances. But the important thing, and this is the critical part to me, SACS would never help us explain to people the difference between the board and the administration. In 2012, when we hired a new superintendent, the new superintendent was permitted by the board out of our desire to
Your Honor,
cooperate.
I hate to object at this point, but I think we've gone for about 3.5 minutes now without an actual question.
Okay.
And the witness is sort of testifying in the narrative at this point.
That is fine with me. I'm going to let him keep going. It's his day. All right?
Well, let me help direct your testimony, Dr. Walker. You said that when you hired the superintendent in 2012, in 2011, your budget at that time was, you had a balanced budget.
She inherited the budget that was in place, which was a balanced budget.
And what happened as a result of that hiring of the superintendent?
We permitted the superintendent to add expenses that were not budgeted in order to achieve the goals she had set in place, to bring in the staff that she chose to bring in. The board members did not represent one personnel. The board members did not fire one personnel, but out of a total commitment to support our superintendent in her Victory in a Classroom program in the 90 days she had set in place to do things, we let her exceed what was in the budget. And that is the reason for the deficit spending. And to assume that over the years we'd had fiscal mismanagement is not true, and it's not fair to the DeKalb school system.
So, other than that 1 year when you all made a decision to allow the superintendent to implement the program she told you were appropriate, did you have any other deficit spending?
Not a one.
Okay.
We had fund balances increasing each year, and the state audits will validate that.
And were the school board members divided into 3 different camps?
It may have been 5 or 6. We had considerable division. Let me be clear. We had black and white. We had conservatives, Tea Partiers, liberals, militants. You name the shade of opinion, it existed on the school board. And we had very animated people who would express their views. But the significant thing, and this is what people, I guess, don't want to acknowledge, is that we took care of school business. We balanced the budget. We hired a superintendent. We supported that superintendent. And we got the work of the school system done with our children at the top of it in each instance. So no matter the differences of opinion, and we had a lot of them, and believe it or not, we even had 81 votes with the chair voting against it. We were allowed to disagree with each other. And to me, that's the beauty of growth. You can disagree without being disagreeable. And no matter what, the school system could not have been dysfunctional and had a smooth separation with the superintendent that we did have, and to come up with an interim person like Michael Thurman. No dysfunctional group could do that, in my opinion.
And were there any big issues that you believe the board needed to address that you all were unable to address because you just couldn't get along?
Not a one. Not a one.
Now, after November of 2012, did the composition of the school board, the DeKalb County School Board, in fact change?
Yes.
And how did it change?
We had 3 new members.
And the 3 new members, did they replace people who all got along with each other?
We worked together. Now, when you say got along, that's a different shade of color to me. I don't quite know what you mean by that. Now, we worked together.
Let me clarify.
Yeah, we were not bosom buddies. We worked together.
And once those 3 individuals were replaced, were you all able to work with the new people who came in?
That's the nature of it. You know, it's just like a General Assembly, or just like county commissioners. You can't select, you can't choose who the people choose them. And then you have a responsibility once they have been chosen to work with them. It's just like a classroom. And this is one of the frustrations I have with SACS. In our classrooms where we have truly incorrigible youth, the teacher can't send those kids home unless they do something egregious. The teacher has to stay there and work with them. Certainly you're going to have students who don't get along. Certainly you're going to have students who be disruptive. But we have professionals there to try to work with those kids. And we had school board members who were cantankerous, who were animated, who were, in my opinion, extremely unreasonable at times. But once the vote was taken, it became the will of the board. And I was, as chair, able to make certain that we voted on all important issues. And once that issue was voted on, we carried it out.
Now, when you received the October 2012 special report from SACS, which placed you on probation, it had a list of required actions. Did you accept that those required actions were accurate from SACS?
I accepted each one of SAC's required actions. And please, I thank you for an opportunity to look at that and speak again on that. I accept currently each one of SAC's required actions. I think they are good required actions that when met will make us an extremely better school system. And I have said that from day one. I'm totally committed to realizing those required actions. What I take serious issue with is the way in that report it seemed to have identified and demeaned Eugene Walker, who was chair. And I've made that clear to everyone. I have been misrepresented in that report.
I've tried to allow counsel and the witness a little leeway, but I'm wondering at what point is this rebutting the state's case in chief? He basically just appears to be rehashing and reiterating and attempting to clarify his own testimony and the testimony that was offered in the petitioner's case in chief.
I'm going to let him have his day in court.
All right, John.
Okay? That's what we're here for. And so we're going to let Dr. Walker tell us what he wants to tell us.
I don't know what to say. You're extremely kind, and I appreciate it, but I don't want to talk too much. I'm talking now. I don't really look forward to talking. All I want you to know is I feel that I was identified and demeaned in that report, and I want to set the record straight.
And Dr. Walker, in setting the record straight, the specific references to you in that report, have you been able to look at those issues and determine that you did not, in fact, engage in those behaviors?
I can't get away from them. Every time I think about it, I've been totally misrepresented. In the issues where I requested the superintendent to supply us with information on expenditures of less than $100,000, I was doing this on the basis of a policy. And I was looking for SACS to say, a job well done. You need to get that information and be transparent with the public and let everybody know that tax dollars is being spent for tax purposes. And instead of getting that kind of an expression of appreciation from them, the people who interviewed me told me I was being dogmatic. And I told them I had to agree with them if they said I was being dogmatic to try to find out where tax dollars was being spent. And likewise, when they challenged me for saying that I rely on bond raters, state auditors, and even their report, SACS, which say we met the standard of handling resources, I thought that they would be appreciative of that. And I was ridiculed for making that kind of a comment. And the biggest and most egregious act of all was they accused me of trying to get a job for some board member, when in fact I was trying to get a job, trying to put a person in a program which hopefully would lead to a job in the TAP program. And I got the impression that I was deliberately being pointed out and attacked in that document. And whether the court believe it or not, I wanted an opportunity to try to set that record straight.
Okay. And Dr. Walker, as far as do you have any knowledge of the DeKalb County School District being placed on any type of probation or accreditation standard lower than full accreditation prior to the advisement that SACS issued in 2011?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And do you know if the DeKalb County School District was accredited prior to 2006?
No, I believe the DeKalb School District as a whole became accredited in 2007.
And Dr. Walker, are you familiar with the most recent nepotism policy that has been adopted by the currently constituted school board?
As I understand it, that was a policy where they changed, it was a conflict of interest policy, and they converted that to a nepotism policy.
And it's a policy that your board had already adopted, is that
Yes, ma'am.
correct? Okay. I don't have any additional questions.
Dr. Walker, you have anything else you want to tell me? We'll sit here till the cows come home, and I mean that.
No, and I know it, and I believe it. I just got to tell you, I'm grateful that you've given me a chance to have my day in court. I've made my case, and now it's up to you and whoever else to make the decision.